excited to have you here. And then the last 10 minutes, I learned how to do a backflip. I'm going to, Amanda, I'm going to turn my back to the audience so I can see the slides while I'm speaking. So forgive my rudeness. And I'm sure there's another way to do this, but I'm not quite sure what it is. So we are really delighted to present today. As I mentioned, as folks were coming in, as if this conference wasn't complicated enough, there are 9 of us. We have a multimedia presentation for you. So I'm Nancy Peter, and I'm the Director of the Center for STEM Education. I'm with the Philly STEM Ecosystem. Just a couple of housekeeping things. We ask you to take a seat either in the middle or on the side. You know, at this point, you can choose the view or you can go off from the Zoom view. During our presentation, we will be muting the audience because we have a lot of that. But when in black, we'll be collecting questions that you can put in the chat, and we will save some time for at the end for the question to come through. Please do post the questions in the chat. There's a couple of other things. Anticipating all of the bells and whistles, we have a backup plan. So none of our stuff works. We're actually putting the links in the chat to the PowerPoint presentation, to the video, to the interactive activities. And if worst comes to worst, we'll just narrate for the next 40 minutes. So we can go over to the next slide, Demetrius. Here we go. So this is our illustrious team. And we've been meeting actually for years, but with a lot of rigor since the COVID began. So you can see that we have many different people from many different ecosystems. Most of us you recognize, some of us are new. And I'll just mention that our list of 9 are formal ecosystem leads, but also the Department of Education and IUs and a couple of informal ecosystems. Diverse geographically as well as many. So for our presentation, next slide, please. We have really 4 things that we want to get across during the next 4 days. We want to share our experience creating an ecosystem of ecosystems. So pulling all of our 8 formal and informal ecosystems, one Pennsylvania Statewide STEM Ecosystem. We want to really tell you a little bit about our challenges and our growth and how we've addressed some of our challenges, and hopefully that will guide you as you go through a similar process. We definitely want to give you tangible tips to take away, and if for some reason we run out of time and we don't get a chance to go through a resource slide, you know where to reach us, and again, we'll make sure that all of this information is listed elsewhere. Definitely want to keep questions and answers. So if you're just joining us, if you have a question, just put it in the chat. Today we're going to be keeping track of those, and my friend Winnie Black is going to be compiling questions. So with that, I'm going to take a seat. I'm going to turn it over to our next presenter.
Good afternoon, everyone. So we're going to begin kind of with an interactive activity for all of you. It's a Mentimeter. It's an online poll. So my name is Alexandra Konsa-Gershinsky of the NEPA STEM Ecosystem, and I'm pleased to meet all of you. Thank you, Nancy, for queuing up the slide for us. And so what I'd like you to do is either use your mobile device and scan the QR code that is behind me, stage right, or in front in the middle screen. Or you can put in the URL that's listed there, and I'd like you to answer the question, what brought you here? So what brought you to this session? And you can put your answers into the Mentimeter that way, and your responses will be populating on the left-hand screen. Thank you.
Hey, Chad, what's up, man? Thanks for meeting with me. Appreciate seeing you, and hey, I just left that a session and I saw your capstone, you lead STEM. That looks like a pretty cool program.
The lead STEM process and the journey has been excellent. Couldn't ask for anything more out of the program from the STEM ecosystem.
Not sure why it keeps skipping here. Anyone interacting with that?
Yeah, it
I'm
keeps
thinking
going
about
on and on.
doing it. I have some ideas of projects that we can do in our Commonwealth.
Oh, without a doubt, Dr. Roberts, you would be an awesome member of the lead STEM cohort too. Each member of the cohort is a great colleague and somebody to bounce ideas off of, and they really spur one another to get through the capstone journey and get to the completion of your project.
You think I can at least get a recommendation from you?
You just let us know, and we're all in supporting you through the lead STEM program and really helping to make sure that it's a positive experience for you. Just let us know.
All right, I'm in, man. All right, I'll talk to you soon, and I'll see you around the rest of the conference.
All right, awesome. We'll see you around. Take care, Dr. Roberts.
Yeah, take care.
Hello?
Hey, what's up, John? It's me. How you doing?
Hey, D. I'm doing well. What can I do for you?
So I'm calling. I'm ready to start thinking about this capstone project. I'm thinking we need to do something where we bring together all these ecosystems, formal and informal ecosystems in the state, and we do some sort of convening. We do some sort of ongoing engagement.
We might want to pitch this idea to the ecosystem leads. We've got that monthly meeting that has all of our partners, whether it's Sandy from Lancaster County or Nancy from Philadelphia, Latrenda from Pittsburgh. We've got the Carbon Formals. That may be a good group to pitch the idea to.
All right, I like that. So how about this? I can put together a little bit more notes around like what that might look like. And if you can give me a shout out at one of the coalition meetings, maybe that'll be the time where we can get some momentum to see who will want to engage in building something like this.
No, that sounds like a good plan. And, if I don't get back to you right away, please just ping me, hit me on a text or something. And I'll take a look at the document. We've got that upcoming meeting. Just give me some gentle reminders, and then we'll pitch it to the team.
All right, and I'll see you soon.
All right, take care.
All right, take care.
Hello?
Hey, John. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Dr. Roberts. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm working on this lead STEM capstone project. I haven't made much progress. I know I sent you over some notes. I'm thinking we might need some help, man. What do you think?
Hey, I was reviewing the notes and the outline you have for the project. I think it's spot on. I'm wondering if we could think about putting together some efforts with Nancy Peter. She's been reaching out recently regarding, bringing all of this work together under one tent. I think it might be time for us to connect with Nancy and see what expertise she could lend to this project.
I could use some hands, man. Let's call her up. I'll send her an email, see if we can get her on the call.
All right, I'll reach out to her today and then we'll get her back.
All right.
All right, thanks, Dr.
All right. Yeah, talk to you later.
Dr. Roberts.
Hey, Joe.
Guys?
What's up?
Hey, I got us on a three-way call with Dr. Peter, myself, and you. I just wanted to circle back on this whole idea of PA United and what we can do to move all of this work forward right at Capstone.
I've taken it as far as I can. My hands are getting busy here with all this coronavirus stuff going on. I need help. I don't know if I have time to devote to this. Nancy, you have time? How's everything going?
I was hoping you would ask. I am so excited to do this work. You guys have done a lot of big thinking and brainstorming and visionary stuff, and I'm ready to give it some wheels. So we can start by convening a work group to really figure out what we do short-term, long-term. We need to create a comprehensive distribution list of all of our stakeholders. I think it'd be great during COVID to have weekly meetings, which we advertise, and then we can have guest speakers, and then we can have follow-up notes. But wait, I'm not done. After we've been together for a week or two, we can write an NSF grant together, and we can create retroactively the norms for working together. I have so many ideas on how to give this back.
Well, Dr. Peter, I love that you're able to hit the ground running and put legs in this project. The only ask that we have here at the Department of Education is that we really rely on those initial stakeholders. So if you remember our monthly meetings, let's make sure that work group we put together includes all of our formal and informal STEM ecosystems. That's really the only ask we have here on.
And I'm already working on the first email, and I promise both of you that you'll get several emails from me within the next hour, peppered by a few texts and one or two phone calls. But I will definitely engage that first stakeholder group, and we can build from there.
I would expect nothing less. I knew Dr. Roberts, as soon as we got Dr. Peter on the call, we would be able to move this project forward with an accelerator attitude.
Well, that's what I love to hear. Somebody that's ready to run and rip and take it forward. So all the meetings, the emails, the phone calls, Nancy, you lead the way and let me know what I can do to support you.
I definitely will. Thanks, guys. I'm on it.
Hey, thanks.
Right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, so that's how it all began. Turn it back over to the next presenter.
Amanda is going to tell us what transpired.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, all. So, what you heard was the beginning steps regarding how we're starting to form together under Commonwealth. And the great thing is that you heard Judd talk about we have 8 formal ecosystems, but we also have 6 informal ecosystems, ones that didn't go for national recognition but exist in the Commonwealth and have started pulling together. And then we also have some consortiums and networks in the regions that were all around collective impact models of how can we improve STEM education, how can we create better access and equity for STEM education for all, and how can all of our ecosystems, consortiums, and networks all be touch points for our students and our families to reach out to and work together on. And so our team, like you see, we have a 9-member team that came together with Judd to really help bring about that awareness of the STEM definition for Pennsylvania, which was a really important piece about what occurred in Pennsylvania, was to create a statewide definition through STEM stakeholder meetings, through those PA STEM Coalition monthly meetings that were occurring with anyone that was interested in working on STEM education. So those weekly and bi-weekly meetings started coming forth with our team of 9 to start talking about how can we create one large ecosystem as a whole. And what drove us was having that NSF Includes grant to start working through as a group and looking at what is needed to really help create a statewide approach. You also heard mention that Nancy said was a master list of participants and communication strategies that we're continuously ongoing, pursuing, and getting out the STEM Coalition and the PA statewide STEM ecosystem to all that are interested in working on this mission and pursuing that vision into practice. And that master list of participants is around 4,000 currently, from individuals that were awardees or participants in some of our statewide STEM grants that we had occurring to our own ecosystem networks. Essentially, we're cultivating that list because we're going to be asset mapping the state utilizing a framework around grand challenges in STEM education, so we can help even leverage more relationships and partnerships across the entire Commonwealth. And then also, if we get that includes grant funding, that's also going to help us create a PA statewide, a PA STEM ecosystem playbook as well about we're interested in developing an ecosystem or a collective impact model. Here are some things to think about and what you need to be considering in that development in Pennsylvania. Go ahead, next slide, please, Demetrius. So when we look at the roadmap or where we've been and where we're going, even prior to last March when COVID hit, the STEM Coalition was something that began under Judd Pittman, who is our special consultant under the Secretary of Education for STEM. And it's a lot of individuals across the Commonwealth, but we realized we needed to do more with them and really look at the needs and topics to bring forth throughout this year. One big topic that we just did with the entire coalition was around equity and access in STEM, and what does that look like, and what are some practices that you should think about in your own STEM programs. As we moved into summer, we definitely got into a lot of great conversations about what is an ecosystem. Is the goal for us to create more ecosystems in the Commonwealth, or are we really trying to shed light on the fact of best practices, whether you're an ecosystem, a consortium, or a network? It's about that collective impact model. And as we moved through these last several months, right now we're in more of that one-way communication, I would say, that we are sending out information and opportunities and events to the entire state, but we are working on communication strategies so this can go from a one-way to a two-way network for the entire Commonwealth, so that we can really build some wonderful cross-sector partnerships. And now to today, where we're sharing our story with you. And I believe we're going to pass it over to Lexi, that will talk about a little bit more with our challenges as well.
Yes, so now that you are all aware of kind of the steps we have taken and the timeline that we have used to kind of create the beginnings of this group, we have a question for you. Is if you were tasked with forming this statewide ecosystem or this collective impact model across a much larger footprint, what would be your challenges? And so we're going to complete a Mentimeter in this regard as well. The QR code is on the middle screen, and the website and the entrance code is on the left there as well. And there is a QR code behind me on the right screen that you can use to scan with your mobile as well. And I believe Demetrius is going to put it in the chat also. So if you would be so kind as to put your response to this question, and we can see your responses populate on the left-hand screen. Thank you.
And if you did the last meter activity, then code and on your screen, you're probably being prompted that I'm changing the slide. And you just yes, and enter your responses. Let's see them figuring out. Thank you.
So as we look at these challenges, I'll talk to you a little bit. My name is Winnie Black. I work in Pennsylvania Statewide After School Youth Development Network, and I'm also involved with Carbon Schuylkill Lucerne Ecosystem. And what I think is interesting here is that many of the challenges are a little bit different than what I expected. So it's great to see, but I think they overlap with ours. I see some trends in internal and external communication, different communication languages, such as the languages businesses use, versus the language educators use, the ways we like to communicate, the amount of time. Teachers don't have the time to communicate during the day. Administrators, we have a tendency to use much more communication. And we've kind of settled on using some of the Google tools, which are free, but internal and external communication, whittling down from maybe 8 or 10 systems down to one system for our coalition, and not repeat sending the same email over and over again to people, is still something that we're working on. And another thing is we have many different working styles. We actually at a retreat did some assessments of our working styles, how best to work. So like I can be very creative at times, and I can be very data-driven at other times. So that can get in the way of some of our work, and sometimes it's a good thing. Defining our audience. We really basically have to think about how we communicate with different folks and ensure that the language makes sense. Again, going back to the business, which has a different vocabulary. We all have limited time, and we all have very specific needs. Like the school needs might be very different from the main office or the school district. As we all know, designated funding is very hard to get. So as we mentioned before, we wrote it in a National Science Foundation includes grant, which is a great way to, for us to seek out funding, and hopefully we'll get it to work on planning, and also our up-and-coming summit. We have to have a summit to bring people together. We don't necessarily know what that summit is going to actually be like. This was actually Demetrius's lead STEM project, so we're still working on bringing the final actions to life. But we're also looking at the PA Smart Money, and I'm sure many of you from Pennsylvania are also looking at the PA Smart Money. And then we have the issues like rural versus a metro or business or large city, and I see one on here working in a bi-state metro, which is very interesting, and I can see where that might be a challenge. So we have many big projects that we want to work on that were already mentioned, like by Amanda, our needs assessment, our asset mapping, working on planning, and then having some kind of summit event, and continuing our work with our coalition. And then finally, one that all rings true, and I don't know if I see it here on the list, but maybe because I didn't refresh, the issues with the pandemic and, limited actions, people working from home, people, which sometimes limits communication, too much Zoom time, etc. So these are all things that I'm really glad that you were able to share. I like this one, hearing the voice of all stakeholders is a great one. I could just spend more time talking about this. We all agree that we have challenges, and if we get together and talk more, I'm sure we come up with many more challenges. But remember, again, where there are challenges, there are opportunities and good sides to this too. And so now Latrenda is going to talk to us about lessons learned and how we take our challenges and apply work.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Latrenda from Pittsburgh, from the Remake Learning Network. And as you can imagine, with any type of collaboration, with any team project, you will have challenges, as Winnie talked about, but you will have a ton of reflections, right? A ton of lessons learned. And so one of the things that, if you're trying to do some type of statewide collaboration, we want to encourage you to get to know your collaborators. This was, I think, a step that we kind of missed out on, right? We have very different ecosystems. We are funded very differently. Some of us are staffed very differently. We didn't realize that initially. And so when we finally took some time to get to know each other, we understood a few more things, right? Maybe you have a bit more time to answer that email immediately. Well, some of us do not. And just being able to acknowledge that and getting that out in the open, I think really helped us to push forward. We also began to define some roles and responsibilities. Who's doing what was truly important, right? Like on any team, we want to know what are the accountability measures and where responsibility starts. And so defining who was going to send out the emails to the large statewide ecosystem, who was going to be responsible, right, for taking the incoming emails, who was going to, talk and liaise with Judd. It's so funny, is our statewide celebrity. And so I was telling him, you're like the Loch Ness monster. It's such a rare sighting, but we had a person that was making sure we always talk with him. And Judd has been super responsive, but he is a statewide celebrity. So who was going to do that? Who was going to make sure we had a solid conversation with Judd? We also, developed some solid working norms, right? Like, what makes sense for this group? What makes sense for each of us when we come together? What do our agendas look like? When will they be sent out? Often will we email each other? And what could our headings look like as it relates to email? So we know when a response is needed or when this is just an FYI. We're continuing to work through that, but definitely that is a part of a process and should always be considered in your work. And just respecting differences. One of the things that we talked about was us having a retreat where we, probably after we submitted the NSF grant, we did a working, your work style assessment. And we probably should have done that at the beginning. And so there are folks within our work, that, again, they have maybe because their stats a bit better than other ecosystems, or even more appropriately, right? They have the ability to respond quicker. There are others that just not do that, right? Like, I can get around to this email maybe the next day. If you need it quicker, I may not be the person that you should be emailing. And just knowing some of that, but also, again, being able to voice it. We have folks that we learned are, more drivers as it relates to being more results oriented versus those who want to talk a bit more about the situation. Like, let's come to a consensus and let's figure all of this out together. Respecting those differences, of course, is important, but also contributes to why this is moving forward. We've acknowledged the differences and also are respecting those, and continuing to try to reach our goals. And then agree on and communicate the why. I will say, we started coming together and we weren't even sure if one that was coming together knew exactly why we were coming together. And so, defining that very strongly with, Demetrius, with Judd, and then also thinking about, our own ideas about why we were coming together. One of the reasons we were coming together is because, well, at the end of the day, right, a STEM coalition for a state is truly important. At the end of the day, leadership changes, right? It's important to keep STEM a priority. How do you do that? You can take a piece out of the bureaucratic space, right, that could be the Department of Education, and convene it with community. And that was one of the reasons why. And I think, of course, all of us have our varying levels of why, but that why, right, is keeping us solidly together. We will ensure that a STEM coalition lasts and is made a priority past our current governor and any governor. Next slide. And so what's next for us? A few things, right? We need money. We need some money, because we are all funded very differently, right? And so to do some of the deliverables that we've talked about, we think funding could be so appropriate for our work and so helpful to move these things forward. Winnie did mention a couple of opportunities that we could have together. Communications, we want to get really specific about who we're talking to, how we're talking to them, and we definitely want to be mindful of, we're in a pandemic, right? Like, people are being communicated to, maybe they're being over communicated to. So what's the right balance for that? And also, what are we communicating as a group? What should that be? How do we develop that strategy? That one-way and two-way strategy. What should that look like long term? And then continuing to source topics from stakeholders for engagement is just going to be crucial to keeping people engaged through a pandemic, virtually. And so I will say the team has been doing a really good job of just trying to keep it fresh and keep it very relevant in terms of the work ahead. And so that's what we want to continue to do. And now we're going to have Winnie source some questions from the audience.
All right, so this is your opportunity. Please put your questions in the chat box. So far, I have one question for Demetrius. Demetrius, how does Judd grow a beard in 5 minutes?
Through the magic of video production, we were able to get Judd to really get into character for his role for this very important film we did. And to do so, he actually did shave to go back in time to be his younger self.
Thank you. Come on now, I'm sure you have some questions. This is your opportunity. I mean, we're always open to hearing from you in person and by email, but or virtually. But this is your opportunity to ask us questions while the video is still hot. Questions, questions, questions.
And Winnie, while we're waiting for the questions, Demetrius, if you could go to the next slide.
I do have one.
Oh, good. So you can take a look at these. There are a few resources we have for this presentation as Winnie continues to field the questions.
All right, so I'm going to start with you, Nancy, on this and see what your perspective is. Can you share how STEM alliances should or could fund themselves?
So there's a natural history term that we all learned that nobody uses, which is, what is it? Ontogeny recapitulates ontogeny. I say that because what we do in our small ecosystems has been able to inform how we do a variety of things in our larger ecosystem. So for the larger ecosystem, the statewide ecosystem, we have no designated funding. But we've already submitted 3 different grant proposals. We're waiting on 3 different grant proposals to fund this larger collective. I do think this is, again, from my ecosystem experience prior to even the statewide work, that sometimes you have to wait for the right funder to come along. So if somebody's interested in direct service, somebody's developing STEM curriculum, those are really great things, but that doesn't apply to our network. But we really seek out organizations and funders that are interested in capacity building and professional development and statewide networking. So my best, other than the adage of make friends before you need them so that people come to you when they have funding, keep your eyes open for appropriate types of funding. Certainly invite anyone else in our group to respond to that question as well.
Yes, I'll also add that with Engine of Central Pennsylvania, it's led by Penn State Center for Science in the Schools that I'm part of. And what we've been doing is starting to add our STEM ecosystem into our federal grants with NSF, USDA, NIH as a network and a way to reach a larger amount of students in schools. So specifically, it's been in that broader impacts portion of research grants, and could always happy to talk more about that offline on our strategy to do so.
So I have a question for you, Amanda. This probably will be our last question. We have Selena, who's a part of a fairly new ecosystem, and she's interested in bringing organizations that are good fit into the ecosystem. For example, there's a university that could provide coding to a few of their schools, and she'd like to bring them in. Are there any good strategies to invite others into the system? That's for Amanda.
I would say that one great strategy to bring in universities into the ecosystem would be to look at how to improve that pipeline. Universities are always probably interested in talking about enrollments from their local region. That might spark some interest there, especially if they have a outreach and engagement office or center, which could be housed in different STEM colleges or within the entire university itself. But those are the groups that I would reach out to first to begin conversations about what are they providing, What STEM programs and outreach areas are they working through, and are they looking at ways to improve their strategies to do so? Would be, I would say, really great beginning conversations.
Well, that's all the questions, and I think that's all our time.
So we thank you all for joining us. We really, really, really worked hard on this presentation, and I hope that our passion and our effort and our lessons learned have made their way out to our audience. And as everyone said, only just the tip of the iceberg. If you want to know more about any aspect of what we talked about, please contact one or all of us.